My husband put something into my drink at a company party, and I watched him do it in the reflection of a framed award on the wall. It was 9:26 p.m. The room was loud enough that no one heard the ice shift in my glass. He didn't look at me when he did it. He looked past me toward the woman in the green dress who always found a way to insult me without raising her voice. She was standing near the photo booth, smiling like she owned the place. My husband turned back, lifted my glass an inch off the cocktail table, and set it down again as if he'd only adjusted it. I didn't drink. I picked up my phone, opened the camera like I was taking a picture of the party, and held it steady for 3 seconds. Then I put the phone away and swapped the glasses when no one was looking, the way you move a napkin to make space. I didn't confront him. I didn't warn anyone. Minutes later, the room changed. People stopped dancing. Someone shouted her name. A chair scraped hard against the floor. And my husband finally looked at me. The music didn't stop right away. It took a few seconds for people to notice that something was wrong, the way it always does when a room is full and everyone assumes someone else will react first. She swayed once, like she'd missed a step. Someone laughed, thinking it was part of the dancing. Then she reached for the edge of the cocktail table and missed it. Her glass tipped and shattered, clear liquid spreading across the floor. My husband froze, not rushed, not concerned, just still. A man from accounting moved toward her. Someone else called her name again, louder this time. She tried to say something and didn't finish the sentence. Her knees buckled. 2 people caught her before she hit the floor. That's when the panic started. Chairs scraped back. A server dropped a tray. The DJ cut the music mid-song. Someone shouted for security. Another voice said to call an ambulance. I stayed where I was. My husband turned toward me, finally, his face searching for something. Confusion, confirmation, relief. He looked at my hands. Empty. He looked at my glass. Gone. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. I stepped closer to the group gathering around her, just enough to hear fragments. She said she felt dizzy. She was fine a minute ago. Did she take anything? My husband pushed through and knelt beside her. He said her name too many times, too fast. His hands hovered, unsure where to touch. He told someone to get water. He told someone else to move back. I noticed his voice had changed. Security arrived, then paramedics. They asked what she'd had to drink. Someone pointed to the bar. Someone else said she'd only had 1 glass. The bartender shook his head and said he remembered pouring it. One of the paramedics asked if anyone had touched her drink. My husband looked up. For half a second, his eyes met mine. I didn't look away. The paramedic asked again, louder. Did anyone see her drink unattended? My husband swallowed. He shook his head once. I reached into my purse and wrapped my fingers around my phone. The camera roll was still open. The paramedics worked quickly. One checked her pulse, while the other asked questions no one could answer clearly. Her shoes had slipped off. One heel lay on its side under the table, the strap twisted. My husband stood up when security asked everyone to step back. He wiped his hands on his trousers, once then again. He said her name like it explained something. A manager arrived and asked whose guest she was. Someone pointed at my husband. He nodded too fast and said she worked with us. He added that she'd been feeling stressed lately. He said it casually, like it was a known fact. The paramedic asked if she had any medical conditions. My husband hesitated, then said he wasn't sure. He said maybe low blood pressure. He said she skipped meals sometimes. I watched him build a story in real time. The paramedic asked for her ID. A woman rummaged through the fallen purse and handed it over. Another paramedic arrived with a stretcher. They lifted her carefully. Her head lolled to the side and knocked lightly against the rail. That sound carried. People stepped aside as they wheeled her toward the exit. Phones came out. Someone whispered that the party was over. Someone else said it was probably alcohol. The manager asked everyone to remain in the room. He said HR would need statements. He said it calmly, but his voice didn't carry the way it had earlier. My husband looked around, then back at me. He took a step closer and lowered his voice. "What happened?" he asked. I shrugged. "I thought she was with you." He stared at my face, searching for something that wasn't there. Security asked us to form a line. Names were taken. Times noted. Who had seen what? I said I'd arrived around 8. I said I'd had one drink and switched to water. I said I'd been near the dance floor when she fell. All of it was true. When it was my husband's turn, he spoke longer. He explained where he'd been standing, who he'd spoken to, what she'd ordered. He mentioned the green dress. He mentioned the bar. He mentioned me once, only to say I'd seemed fine. HR asked if anyone had handled her drink. Silence followed. The bartender repeated that he'd poured it himself. A server said she picked it up and carried it away. No one looked at me. An HR representative asked if there had been any conflict earlier in the evening. Someone laughed nervously and said it was a party. The question was written down anyway. My phone vibrated in my hand. A notification from the cloud confirmed a video upload. I locked the screen and slipped the phone back into my purse. The manager announced the party was officially ended. He thanked everyone for their cooperation and asked us to leave in small groups. Outside, the night air felt cooler than it should have. In the parking lot, my husband walked beside me, without touching me. He asked again what I thought happened. I said I didn't know. I said it was scary how fast things could change. He nodded and unlocked the car. On the drive home, he didn't turn on the radio. At a red light, he said her name again, quietly this time. He asked if I thought she'd be okay. "I hope so," I said. He glanced at my purse, then back to the road. "Did you see anything strange tonight?" he asked. I looked out the window. The light turned green. "No," I said. At home, he went straight to the sink and washed his hands. He left the water running longer than necessary. I went to the bedroom and plugged my phone in. The video finished processing. The notification came through at 12:14 a.m. Video uploaded successfully. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what it showed because I'd framed it carefully without thinking about framing at all. The award plaque behind him, the reflection, his hand moving where it shouldn't have, the glass shifting, the pause before he stepped away. In the bathroom, he brushed his teeth longer than usual. He rinsed twice. He checked his phone and set it face down on the counter. When he came to bed, he lay on his back and stared at the ceiling. "She's probably dehydrated." He said, "These things happen." I didn't answer. The next morning, he left early. No goodbye, no coffee. At 9:03 a.m., my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. At 9:07, a message followed. "This is HR. Please call us back regarding last night's incident." I waited until 9:20 and called back. I answered questions the same way I had before. Times, locations, what I saw, what I didn't. I didn't add details. I didn't speculate. I said I was concerned and hoped she was okay. They thanked me and said they might follow up. At 10:42, my husband texted, "Any updates?" I replied, "No." At noon, the woman in the green dress appeared in a group chat. A single message. "In hospital. Doctors say it wasn't alcohol." Then silence. My husband came home early. He said the office had been sent home for the day. He asked if HR had called me. I said yes. He asked what I'd told them. I said the truth. He watched me closely. "You didn't mention anything else?" "There wasn't anything else," I said. That evening, he tried to be helpful. He made dinner. He asked if I needed anything. He said he felt bad about the whole thing. He said the party had gotten out of hand. He said he hoped she recovered quickly. I washed the dishes and left them to dry. At 8:31 p.m., another message from HR arrived asking for a formal statement. They attached a link. I filled it out slowly, saving after each section. At the end, there was a checkbox asking if I had any media related to the incident. I didn't check it. I submitted the form and closed the laptop. At 9:02, my husband's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and went quiet. He stood and paced once, then twice. He stopped by the window and looked out at nothing. "They're asking questions," he said. "This could get messy." "I'm sure they'll sort it out," I replied. He turned to me. "You didn't see anything strange, right?" I met his eyes. I told them what I saw. He nodded, but he didn't relax. At 11:47 p.m., my cloud storage sent another notification. "File accessed." I sat on the edge of the bed and waited. A minute later, my husband came back into the room, holding his phone like it was heavier than it had been before. He didn't sit down. "They found something," he said. I looked up at him. "Security footage," he added, "from the bar area." I tilted my head. "What kind of something?" He swallowed. "Something that doesn't look good." I stayed where I was. I didn't ask questions. I didn't offer comfort. He finally said my name. That was when I knew the story he'd been telling himself was about to run out of room. He sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed his palms together. Slow at first, then faster, like friction might help him think. His phone buzzed again. He ignored it. "They said it was a foreign substance," he said. "Not alcohol, not medication." I nodded once. "They're reviewing access footage," he continued. "Who was near which drinks? Who touched what?" He stood and walked to the dresser, opened a drawer, then closed it without taking anything out. "This is getting blown out of proportion." I stayed quiet. "They asked if anyone might have a reason to mess with her," he said. I told them no. I said it was a work event. He watched my face for a reaction. There wasn't one. At 8:06 a.m. the next morning, his phone rang again. This time he answered. He stepped into the hallway and lowered his voice, but the walls were thin. "I already told you," he said. "No, she wouldn't." A pause. "Yes, I understand." Another pause. Longer. "I can come in." He ended the call and stood there for a moment before coming back into the room. He picked up his jacket. He didn't look at me. "They want another statement," he said. "Formal." I nodded. At 9:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. HR would like to schedule a brief meeting. I replied that I was available afternoon. He left without breakfast. I took the laptop to the kitchen and opened the cloud folder. The video sat there with a timestamp and a thumbnail. I watched it once, not to relive it, to confirm the angle. The reflection was clean. His hand was clear. The swap wasn't. At 12:03 p.m., HR called. 2 people on the line. They asked me to walk through the evening again. I did. They asked if I noticed anything unusual. I said I noticed my husband adjusting my glass. They asked how I knew it was mine. I said it had a slice of lime on the rim. They asked if I had anything to support that observation. I said yes. There was a pause, then a request for a secure upload. At 12:19 p.m., I sent the file. At 1:41 p.m., my husband came home early again. He set his keys down carefully and didn't pick them up again. "They showed me something," he said, "from the cameras." I waited. "They said it looks like I tampered with a drink," he said. "They asked me to explain." And I asked. He swallowed. I told them it was a misunderstanding. At 2:08 p.m., his phone buzzed with an email. He read it, then read it again. "They've placed me on leave," he said, "pending investigation." He looked at me like he expected anger or relief. I gave him neither. "They want to talk to you again," he added. "Together." "I won't," I said. He blinked. "What?" "I won't do it together." I repeated. "You can go alone." He sat down heavily. "You're making this worse." I stood and began clearing the counter. "I'm not making it anything." At 4:52 p.m., another email arrived. Subject line, "Evidence Review Update." He opened it on speaker without meaning to. A calm voice message played, summarizing findings. The phrase "intentional interference" appeared once. He reached to stop it, too late. At 5:10 p.m., he said my name again, softer this time, like a request. I finished drying the last plate and set it into the cupboard, aligning it with the others. Outside, a car alarm chirped and went silent. Inside, the truth had nowhere left to hide. The meeting was scheduled for the next morning at 10 o'clock. Separate rooms, separate calls. That detail came through in the calendar invite, not the body of the email. He read it twice and said nothing. I arrived 5 minutes early and sat at the small desk in the spare room. The chair was firm. The lamp buzzed faintly when I turned it on. I adjusted the shade and waited for the line to connect. HR joined first. Legal joined second. A third voice identified herself as an external investigator. She confirmed the recording and asked if I was comfortable proceeding. I said yes. They walked through the timeline again. Arrival time. Drink order. Where I stood. Where he stood. When the music changed. When the woman in the green dress fell. I answered with times, not explanations. I described what I saw, not what I felt. They asked about the relationship between my husband and the woman. I said she worked with him. I said she had insulted me before. I gave one example, and the date. I didn't add commentary. They asked if I had touched any drinks. I said I had moved glasses while cleaning space on the table. They asked whose glass I moved. I said I didn't know. I said people were setting drinks down everywhere. They asked why I recorded video. I said I take pictures at company events. I said the award wall looked nice. They asked if I knew what substance was found. I said no. The investigator thanked me and said they would be in touch. The call ended without small talk. Down the hall, his door opened and closed. He didn't knock. They asked me if I meant to harm anyone. He said. I told them no. I nodded. They asked why I touched your glass. He continued. I said I didn't remember. I stayed quiet. They asked if I had a relationship with her. He said. I said it was complicated. I picked up the mug on the desk and took a sip. It was cold. They showed me the video. He said. Your video. I looked at him then, and they said it contradicts my statement. He said. They said it's clear. He waited. I didn't fill the silence. They asked me why you would record that. He said. I didn't know what to say. At 1:18 p.m., my phone buzzed with an email. Subject line, next steps. I didn't open it yet. He sat down on the bed and put his head in his hands. This is going to ruin everything, he said. I opened the email. It outlined process, suspension pending outcome, cooperation required, no contact with involved parties. They told me not to talk to her. He added, they told me not to talk to you about it either. I closed the email. You already did, I said. He looked up. What are you going to do? I'm going to follow instructions, I replied. At 3:02 p.m., another message arrived. From legal. They requested my availability again the following week. I confirmed. He stood and paced once, then stopped. You switched the glasses, he said. Finally, I didn't answer. He took a breath. Didn't you? I met his eyes. I didn't drink. He stared at me, trying to place the words. So you knew. I noticed, I said. His mouth opened, then closed. He sat back down. At 5:44 p.m., his phone rang. He answered and turned away. I heard my name once, then the word evidence again. When he hung up, he didn't look at me. They're terminating my access, he said. I set the mug in the sink and rinsed it. I left it upside down on the towel. Outside, the light shifted toward evening. Inside, the story ended the way it had to. The termination notice arrived at 7:18 p.m. It wasn't dramatic. A single email with a subject line that didn't use his name. Employment status update. He opened it on his phone and scrolled once. Then again. He handed it to me without speaking. The language was careful, effective immediately, pending review by authorities, access revoked, property to be returned, no contact with named parties. He sat at the table and stared at the wood grain as if it might rearrange itself. They said they're cooperating. He said that it's standard. I nodded. At 7:41, another message came through. From legal. It asked if I was willing to provide my device for forensic confirmation. I replied yes, and named a time the next day. He watched me type. You don't have to, he said. I do, I replied. He didn't argue. That night, he slept on the couch. The television stayed on low. I turned it off before I went to bed and set the remote where it belonged. In the morning, I packed a small bag with my phone charger and ID. At the office, they logged my device, copied the file, and returned it in a sealed envelope. The investigator thanked me for being precise. When I got home, he was still there. He asked what would happen next. I said the process would continue. He asked if I hated him. I don't. I said, I stopped trying to protect you. He looked down and nodded as if that explained something. By afternoon, the group chat went quiet. Someone posted a short message wishing the woman in the green dress a quick recovery. No one replied. At 6:03 p.m., I received a final note from HR confirming my cooperation and closing my involvement. It said no further action was required from me. I archived it. He stood in the doorway and asked where I would go. I said I was staying. He asked if that meant forgiveness. It means boundaries, I said. He packed a box with his things. Not everything, just enough. When he left, the door closed without a sound that lingered. Later, I washed a glass and set it upside down on the towel. The house felt ordinary again. Some people try to control outcomes by hiding truth in plain sight. Others keep their dignity by noticing, documenting, and choosing not to drink. The days after that didn't announce themselves. Monday arrived without messages. Tuesday followed. By Wednesday, the quiet had settled into something steady. I returned the sealed envelope to a drawer and didn't open it again. The phone stayed face up on the counter. No missed calls appeared. He texted once to ask about mail. I replied with a photo of the box on the table. He said thank you. Nothing else followed. I went back to work. People asked how the party ended. I said it ended early. That was enough. No one pressed. The woman in the green dress didn't return. HR sent a short update saying she was recovering. No details were shared. At home, I rearranged the cupboard. The glasses went on the top shelf. The chipped one stayed where it was. I didn't throw it away. On Friday evening, I signed papers at the kitchen table. Separation, temporary orders, clear language. I read every line and initialed carefully. When I finished, I stacked the pages and slid them into a folder. I didn't rush. Later, I poured water into a clean glass and took a sip. It tasted like nothing. That felt right. The following week, an email arrived confirming the case had been referred onward. No action needed from me. I archived it and shut the laptop. That night, I sat on the couch and watched a program I didn't care about. The volume stayed low. When it ended, I turned the television off and sat in the quiet for a minute longer. I thought about how easily people mistake access for entitlement, how often silence is confused with permission, how small choices add up when no one thinks you're paying attention. I washed the glass, dried it, and set it upside down on the towel. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain myself. I didn't drink. Sometimes self-respect isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just the moment you notice, choose differently, and let the truth do the rest. A month passed without anything breaking the quiet. The mailbox filled with ordinary things. Utility notices, grocery flyers, a replacement card for an account I'd already changed. I sorted them at the counter and recycled what didn't matter. One afternoon, an envelope arrived from a number I recognized, but hadn't saved. Inside was a short letter from the company confirming the investigation had concluded. No names, no explanations, just a line stating that internal safeguards had been updated and that cooperation was appreciated. I folded it once and placed it beneath the others. That evening, I changed the locks. The technician worked quickly and asked where I wanted the spare key kept. I said I didn't need one. He nodded and left. At work, people adjusted without asking questions. Meetings resumed. Deadlines moved forward. Someone mentioned a new policy about event safety. It passed without comment. The woman in the green dress never came up in conversation again. At home, I took my time with small things. I fixed a hinge that had squeaked for years. I organized a drawer I'd avoided. I threw away old business cards that belonged to people I no longer spoke to. Once, late at night, my phone buzzed with a message from him. Just 3 words. I didn't mean. I deleted it before it finished loading. The next morning, I woke early and opened the window. The street was quiet. A delivery truck passed and turned the corner. I made coffee and stood at the counter until the cup cooled enough to drink. Later, I updated my records. Beneficiaries, emergency contacts, passwords I hadn't changed in too long. Each confirmation screen appeared, then disappeared. I noticed how little space he occupied now. No arguments to prepare for. No explanations to rehearse. Just room. On Sunday, a friend asked how I was holding up. I said I was fine. She looked like she wanted to ask more. She didn't. That night, I washed the last glass from the sink and placed it on the towel. It sat there clear and empty. Some people mistake kindness for access. Others mistake silence for weakness. I learned the difference the moment I chose not to drink, not to explain, and not to carry someone else's intentions for them. Truth doesn't need defending when boundaries are clear, and dignity doesn't shout. It simply stays. The season shifted without asking. Mornings grew lighter earlier. I stopped checking the weather and started opening the window, first, then deciding what to wear. The calendar filled with routine things again. Appointments, work deadlines, one lunch penciled in and then crossed out. At the office, a new manager introduced herself and spoke about transparency like it was a fresh idea. I listened and took notes. When the meeting ended, I stayed behind to finish an email and left without joining the hallway conversation. At home, I replaced the glasses in the cupboard with a matching set. Not expensive, just even. I gave the chipped one to a neighbor who needed something temporary. She thanked me and said she'd return it. I told her not to worry about it. A notice arrived from the bank confirming the account change had processed fully. One line at the bottom asked if I needed anything else. I didn't. He tried once more weeks later. Not a call, not a message. A letter sent to the old address out of habit. It arrived forwarded, creased from handling. He wrote about regret without naming anything specific. He asked if we could talk. I didn't respond. I shredded the letter and emptied the bin before bed. On a quiet evening, I stood at the sink and watched water fill a glass. I noticed how clear it looked before I lifted it, how nothing floated to the surface. I drank it slowly and set the glass down. The house no longer held tension in its corners. Doors closed the way they were meant to. The floor didn't creak at night. Even the light in the hallway stayed steady. Sometimes I thought about the moment at the party, not with anger, with distance. The way you remember a wrong turn after you've already taken the correct road. What stayed with me wasn't fear. It was recognition. The instant something didn't belong where it was placed, I learned that noticing is a form of protection, that boundaries don't need announcements, that truth is strongest when it's documented, then left alone. I didn't win anything. I didn't lose myself either. I simply stopped drinking what wasn't meant for me, and I never set my glass down where someone else could reach it again. By the time autumn arrived, the story had stopped following me. Leaves collected along the curb and stayed there until someone else swept them away. I stopped thinking about timing my routes or checking reflections in glass. I moved through rooms without rehearsing explanations. One afternoon, I found the photo from the company party buried in my phone gallery. Not the video, just a still image someone had tagged me in. Laughter caught mid-frame. Glasses raised. I removed the tag and archived the photo. It felt like returning something to a place it no longer belonged. At work, the new safety policy became routine. Wristbands at events, sealed drinks, a reminder at the top of every invite. People joked about it once, then stopped. Normal adapted, the way it always does. At home, I replaced a shelf in the kitchen that had sagged for years. The brackets held firm this time. I lined up the glasses and stepped back to check the spacing. They didn't touch. A message arrived from a number I didn't recognize, asking if I was open to talking for closure. I didn't reply. I blocked it and went back to what I was doing. On a quiet evening, a friend came over and brought soup. We sat at the table and talked about her work, her plans, the weather turning colder. She asked if I wanted wine. I said no. She poured water instead and didn't comment. Later, after she left, I washed the bowls and set them to dry. I noticed how automatic the motions had become, how little effort it took to keep things in order now. Weeks passed, then months. The file in the drawer stayed closed. The emails stopped arriving. The silence didn't feel like avoidance anymore. It felt like completion. One morning, I wrote a list and crossed off the last item. It wasn't a task. It was a habit I no longer needed. I learned that trust isn't restored by apologies or explanations. It's rebuilt by distance, consistency, and choosing differently when it matters. I didn't carry the past forward. I didn't warn anyone loudly. I didn't ask to be believed. I noticed. I documented. I stepped aside. Dignity isn't about proving what someone did. It's about knowing exactly why you don't need to anymore. And once you learn that, you don't drink anything you didn't pour yourself. Winter came quietly. The first cold morning, I found frost on the inside edge of the window and wiped it away with my sleeve. The glass cleared unevenly, leaving streaks I didn't bother fixing. I made coffee and stood at the counter until my hands warmed around the mug. At work, the year-end review passed without incident. Numbers were discussed, targets adjusted. Someone joked about the long year. I smiled when appropriate and packed my bag when it was over. At home, I boxed up the last of his things that had been left behind. A charger that didn't fit my phone. A tie he rarely wore. Old receipts folded into a wallet I didn't recognize. I sealed the box and dropped it at the courier the next morning. I didn't keep the tracking number. A message came later confirming delivery. I deleted it. One evening, the power went out for an hour. I lit a candle and sat at the table, listening to the building settle. When the lights came back on, I blew the candle out and washed the glass before putting it away. A notice arrived from the company announcing a new role. Interim coverage made permanent. The email didn't mention the past. It didn't need to. Systems adjust. People move on. I noticed how often I reached for water now, how natural it felt to fill a glass and drink without thinking, how little effort it took to keep it with me. A friend asked if I was dating. I said no. She nodded and said that made sense. We talked about other things. Late one night, I found myself rereading the final HR email. Not for reassurance, just to confirm the date. I closed it and shut the laptop. On the first morning of the new year, I cleaned the kitchen and set the glasses back on the shelf. They were evenly spaced. Nothing chipped. Nothing left over. I opened the window and let cold air in for a moment, then closed it again. There are lessons people expect you to announce. Warnings they think you owe. I didn't offer either. What I learned stayed with me in practice, not speech. I pour my own drinks